Good afternoon, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar on Marlis Sklodowska-Curie Actions Postdoctoral Fellowship or MSCA-PF. We are delighted to be joined by a team from Danish Ministry of Higher Education and Science, who together with other Horizon Europe NCPs in Denmark from a division within the ministry called EURAXESS. My name is Derya Büyüktanır Karacan. I am the program manager of EURAXESS North America and a visiting scholar at George Washington University. With my colleague Jackson Howard, we are one of the 9 EURAXESS hubs all over the world. I would like to introduce our speakers, Maibohm and Marlis Erichsen, joining us from Copenhagen. Many thanks to both of you. Anna and Marlis are national contact points and program committee members for Marlis Sklodowska-Curie Actions at the Danish Ministry of Higher Education and Science. Thank you, Anna and Marlis, for joining us today. For those joining for the first time, I want to explain what EURAXESS briefly. EURAXESS is an initiative of the European Commission that promotes and facilitates the the mobility of researchers and their career development. We disseminate opportunities for researchers of all nationalities in all fields who want to create partnerships with Europe. You can count on EURAXESS for everything that has to do with mobility, like looking for funding, job vacancies, a hostel institution, partners in Europe, get to help, preparing for your arrival in a new country, explanations and understanding of the European Commission fundings programs, schemes, and much more. As EURAXESS North America, we cover the US and Canada for the EURAXESS project. We are at your service to disseminate information on European research funding and to help strengthen transatlantic research ties. Whether you are an individual researcher or a representative of a university or other institution, let us know how we can help you. Last week, we supported a webinar on opportunities for US institutions to get involved in Horizon Europe and EU funding opportunities. We will share a link in the chat to this so that you can view the recording. The same principles discussed in this event apply to Canadian institutions as well. And next Tuesday, to follow up on this webinar, we will host Ireland's Southeast Technological University for an info session on postdoctoral fellowships, host institutions with a representative from a school who has university as a host institution and the support offered to applicants, which can be a great window into not just that school, but also the process of engaging with host institutions as a part of MSCA fellowship application. And also, I would like to add that on Tuesday, July the 5th, we will co-host a webinar on European Research Council grants, which, like MSCA fellowships, are bottom-up grants offered by the EU. We have several great recordings of MSCA and ERC info sessions from the previous years available on YouTube channel, but we encourage you to check out this one, as it will include a panelist from the NSF, National Science Foundation, who will address specific US aspects and be available alongside us to answer questions. We are putting together the agenda and we will have a registration page up soon, but in the meantime, we invite you to drop your email addresses in the chat, and then we will follow up with you when the event page has been launched. I encourage you to visit our EURAXESS North America website and our social networks on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube to take the advantage of all opportunities we have identified for you. My colleague Jackson Howard, he is sharing all the links with you, or he will share. I would also like to encourage you to use the Q&A function, not the chat function, please, to ask your questions. We will have some breaks, several periods, to answer your questions during the presentation. And also at the end of the presentation, we will have a final Q&A session. And a quick reminder that we will provide you with the recording and the slides of the session after the event. However, the recording will not include Q&A. So I would recommend to stay for the entire duration if you want our experts to address the common queries you have. So I would like, after this long introduction, I would like to give the floor to our speakers. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Daria, and thank you very much for having us here today. We're excited, as always, to present the postdoctoral fellowships under the Marlis Sklodowska-Curie actions in Horizon Europe. I'll just attempt to share my slides. There we go. So I hope this is visible for everyone now. Yes, as Daria said, my name is Maibohm, and together with my colleague Marlis Erichsen here today, we are representatives for the national contact points for Marlis Sklodowska-Curie actions in Horizon Europe. We are based here at the Danish Agency for Higher Education and Science. So we bid you a good evening here from Copenhagen, where it's 6 p.m., so just about dinner time. Yeah, as I said, we're excited to be joining you today. Just a brief look at what we'll be covering. So first, just a little bit about our role as these national contact points who are based in most countries in the world, actually. And then, of course, we'll talk about the postdoctoral fellowships, the eligibility criteria, as well as the funding available. And then we'll dive a little bit more into applying for a fellowship. We will cover the two parts of the application, which is part A and part B. And then we'll also take a look at some of the common mistakes that we've seen and that the European Commission has seen in these applications. Then we'll finish off with a little bit more about sort of the format of the application, as well as the evaluation process. And then, as was already said, we have some breaks throughout for question and answers. So feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A, and then we'll answer them throughout, but also have a final Q&A session towards the end. And then we know that it's been a long time of these online sessions and Zoom meetings, and it can get a little hard just listening for a long time. So we try and make them a little interactive, and hence we've also tried to include a couple of Slido questions where we hope that you will want to join in and provide some answers to our questions. And so they'll come sort of throughout the webinar as well. The first one we have here, we'd like to know from you what your main interest is today. And the way to access Slido is either to open a new browser and enter slido.com, and then this code that you see on the screen, which is 0655252, or you can also join from your phone. And if you enter this code, you should be able to answer this question: what is your main interest today? So what would you like to learn more about here in this webinar? I'll just give you a little time to type in some questions. I can see some are already typing. So of course, there's an interest in the funding available, which is natural, and we'll of course cover that as well. Something about the timing and optimal timing for application. Tips for the application, also what's new. You can see more people typing, so we'll just give it another minute. So the common mistakes, and I'm happy to say that we have some slides on that, and we'll go through that a little bit later. Yeah, see application tips and application advice. So we'll try and make it as practical as we can with the time available. Right, so with that, I think we'll just move on and then return to Slido a little bit later. Yeah, so as was said, Marlis and I are national contact points for Horizon Europe, and we are based here in a division called Eurocenter, where we actually have all the national contact points, all the Danish national contact points for Horizon Europe are gathered here. And as such, it is our obligation to spread the word about the funding available in Horizon Europe. And we offer guidance on how to find a suitable topic, how to go about writing a strong application. And we also offer advice on the actual implementation of projects. So we sort of cover the whole line from applying and then also implementing the projects and the final reporting and ending of the projects. We've added a link here where you can find the national contact points of your host country. So if you're applying for a fellowship and looking to go to a specific country, you can find the national contact point in that country. Then just to set sort of the overall frame, so we're talking about Horizon Europe, which is the EU's very large framework program for research and innovation. And here, the Skłodowska-Curie Actions Program is based in the Pillar 1, so the excellent science pillar. And here, the Marie Curie program has a budget of 6.6 billion euro over a 7-year period running from 2021 to 2027. The Marie Curie program covers actually 5 different actions. We have the doctoral networks, postdoctoral fellowships, which we're talking about today. Then there's also the staff exchanges program, as well as the co-fund, and last, the MSCA and citizens program. So this is just to say that there are other funding opportunities available as well under the Marie Curie program. Today, however, we'll be focusing on the postdoctoral fellowships. And with this, we just have another question for you. We'd like to know what your role is in relation to the postdoctoral fellowships. So if you just, if you're already in Slido, you should be able to see the question now, or you can go to slido.com with this code. And we'd like to know whether you're an applicant. So you're planning to apply or considering applying, whether you're a supervisor, and wanting to take part in a project in that role, whether you're research support or whether you're from a company or the industry. Can also be a host for a global fellowship, planning to be a host. And then of course there's also this last opportunity or option of just being curious. I know this overlaps maybe with some of the other possible answers, but it's also possible to just answer this one. And I can see that we have many applicants and potential applicants joining. It's good for us to know also where we put sort of our focus throughout the rest of the webinar. Also, there are some from the research support, a research support unit of some sort. Also some global fellowship hosts, and then also some that are just curious. I hope we'll have some useful information for all of you. So I'll just close this one now, and then I think Marlis, you will take over. And I know you can't control your slides, so I'll try and control them here for you, but I'll pass the word on to you.
Thank you very much. And do you hear me? Yes, good. I'm not sure my camera is on because I dropped out just a moment. My network dropped out, but I think everything is good if you hear me. Good. So just to present the postdoctoral fellowships here, who is it for? It's for experienced researchers who want to carry out their research activities abroad, acquire new skills and develop their careers. So, and also it's for organizations, research group leaders who want to attract qualified researchers to their research groups. So this is for anyone who has a PhD and is interested in developing their research careers especially. And I saw just in the voting that it looked like you were many applicants who would like to sort of apply as the researcher, the fellow in the project. And if you'll just click Anne, then we can get some more information. see if that works. Yes, the call is something that happens annually, and it was announced on the 12th of May this year, and it has a deadline on the 14th of September with a total budget of 257 million euro. Yes, you can click on. So about the fellowship, and you'll just keep clicking in. You know the presentation. Good. So the aim is to strengthen researchers with a doctoral career. So this is really research career based, and that also means that your proposal is not sort of a research proposal as such. It's also a proposal to show how your career will develop through this fellowship. So that's a really strong point that has to be made, that it's very personal and career directed proposal. Yes. You will work on your individual research project with a supervisor who is assigned from the host organization. And you focus on the I3 mobility as part of the project. And this is international mobility. So this would be where we use this mobility rule that I present in a moment. It has to be intersectoral, preferably, and also interdisciplinary. So these are things that will make your proposal strong if you use this I3 mobility principle, strengthening your career through being international, intersectoral, and interdisciplinary. You should also focus on a non-academic sector participation, and there has been a development from Horizon 2020 to Horizon Europe Now, where you can also put in a placement where you are in a non-academic sector organization, for example, a company, at the end of your proposal. I'll show you that in a moment. Yes. So why should you try for a postdoctoral fellowship for the researcher? So this would typically be the persons participating here. It would be new learning opportunities. It would improve your CV and enhance your profile internationally. For the supervisor who's participating and who's recruiting the fellow, it's an opportunity to attract a free, as we say, high quality postdoctoral researcher to the research group, bring additional expertise. And so these are excellent science projects. It's the best of the best who are chosen. So you'll bring new expertise to your research group. You'll enhance the visibility of the mentoring as a supervisor and the leadership skills, and you'll also enlarge the international network. So if you recruit someone, then you also, of course, gain their network as yours. So I just want to go through some definitions that we're using, of some terms that we're using in this presentation. Because when we say Europe, we mean the EU 27 member states and also associated countries. So in Horizon Europe, you can, as a country, you can associate to Horizon Europe, and that means that you are participating as if you were a member state in the EU. So when your organization, the legal entity in that country, wants to enter into a project, then you're treated as if you're an EU member state. And sort of the most current list of these associated countries, we've added that into the presentation here. We have Albania, Armenia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, the Faroe Islands, Georgia, Iceland, Israel, Kosovo, Moldova, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Norway, Serbia, Tunisia, Ukraine, and Turkey. Tunisia, and so on, they just entered very recently. But this means they participate, and you can go to these countries as part of the European Fellowship. So any other countries that are not EU 27 or associated countries are named third countries, just anywhere else in the world. Okay, thanks, and you can go to the next. Then we have a definition that is the associated partners. These are anyone who are not beneficiaries, who are not applying as such to recruit somebody. They would be associated partners. So I've just taken the definition from the work program here: entities which participate in the action but without the right to charge costs or claim contributions. They sort of work on the project but don't sign a grant agreement with the Commission, and they can't sort of employ. But there is this exception for global postdoctoral fellowships in the outgoing phase, where the associated partner would employ, perhaps with a an additional contract for the researcher. So our example, speaking to you in the US, would be in a global fellowship. The US organization is part of the Global Fellowships program. There is a host in a member state or associated country, a hosting organization, for example, let's say Denmark, where we are, and then a global fellowship in the US. So they would recruit somebody also here in this for a time. But I'll show you more precisely about the rules in the next slides. You have these two types of fellowships. You have a European fellowship with mobility within or to Europe. So you can be of any nationality and apply for a European fellowship and go to Europe or associated countries with this fellowship. And the other type of fellowship is the global fellowship, where you have mobility from Europe to outside Europe, followed by a mobility back to Europe. And in the next slide, it's sort of described in time periods. I'll show you that in a moment. And just to say also, it funds all research domains. Here, Marie Curie is bottom-up research. You can choose any topic you want, and also areas covered by the Euratom Treaty. They're sort of included in the evaluation and just sort of funded by Euratom if relevant. Okay. So the duration of these fellowships would be in the European fellowship. You have 12 to 24 months, and we call it person months, and I'll show you the reason for that in a moment. 12 to 24 person months where you can come from any country in the world and spend this time in a European or associated country. In the global fellowship, you would go for 12 to 24 months to a third country and then return to the member states or associated countries for 12 months. And this is a compulsory return phase. So you have to consider that this is EU money being spent, and the EU wants to get this advantage of the knowledge and network and research globally from the excellent scientists. And therefore you have this compulsory 12-month return to the organization where you are originally hosted. Okay. Then this new addition is a placement, where it's possible to add 6 months in a non-academic organization after the fellowship. And this would be funded as a sort of a prolongation, really, after the general sort of fellowship. You would be in a company, for example, for 6 months with the same salary that you have for the rest of the fellowship. This placement can be in any European or associated country, so it can't be in a third country. So you have to choose somewhere in the EU or associated countries. Mm-hmm. You have also the option to have secondments, so where you go to another organization. This would be a partner, an associated partner, for 1/3 of the fellowship duration. If your science needs some type of extra knowledge from another organization, you can go to any country in the world or any organization in the world and gain this knowledge, but only for up to 1/3 of the duration of the fellowship. And in the case of global fellowships, this would only be during the global period of the fellowship, just to ensure that you have this 12-month return phase. Another rule in the program is that there is this to ensure that this is a real exchange of knowledge between countries and organizations, is that you have this mobility rule. So you have to consider the European Union doesn't just want to sort of fund the researchers who are already employed in an organization, and therefore there is this mobility rule where you cannot have resided or carried out your main activity in the country of the beneficiary or the host organization for the outgoing phase for more than 12 months in the last 36 months immediately before the call deadline. And this means you can have spent some time in the country where you're going, but not more than these 12 months within the 36 months before the call deadline. So this is the mobility rule. And on the next slide, we have this rule also that it has to be an experienced researcher who must be in possession of a doctoral degree. This is defined as successfully defended thesis, doctoral thesis. So you may still have the document itself is still sort of outstanding, but then you have defended it. That's sufficient at the call deadline. But there is also another rule, this 8-year rule, where you have a limit on the research experience. So this is for younger researchers or not as experienced researchers, because you have a maximum of 8 years full-time equivalent research experience after the doctoral degree. So you're in this time span of 8 years of full-time research experience. And this is to ensure that this is something for researchers and to develop their career and sort of in the earlier phases of their career. But there are these incentives for a career restart and for reintegration. So a career restart would be if, for example, you have been away from your research career on a parental leave, or you have had a sick leave, or you've been working within industry, then you would not count that period of time as part of your full-time research experience. It could also be the case that you've been working only part-time on research, so 50% on research and 50% on management or teaching or something like that. Then you can register 50% full-time research equivalent for that period of time. And that would sort of just count half of that period. So there are some ways to calculate this research experience. There is actually a wizard on the web page for the call that you can use to calculate this. And just to explain the reintegration also, this is to bring people who are either Europeans or have had a long-term stay in Europe or associated countries of 5 years. To reintegrate them into Europe, there is this option to not count the period of time they've been in the third country. So that's another way of giving an incentive for somebody who's been outside of European research, you can say. Okay, thanks, Anne. And also to explain the funding, so what is in it for you? You can say how can this fellowship be funded? There are sort of 2 large sections in this, and one is the contributions for recruited researchers, and this is always counted per person month. So I'll go through the first section first, contributions, and if you just click once more, and we have this first one, which is the living allowance. The living, mobility and family allowance, the first 3 always go to the researcher, to the fellow, as part of their gross amount salary. So you would have 5,080 euros as a gross amount salary, with an additional 600 euro per month, per person month, as a mobility allowance, and perhaps a family allowance of 660 euros. The living allowance, here there applies a country correction coefficient regarding the country you're going to. So if you're, for example, we've added here the country correction coefficients of the US and Canada. For the US it's 102.3%, and for Canada it's 95.2%, which is used on this amount of 5,080 euros. In the case of Denmark, because we have very high taxes and certain living costs, it's 132%. So this would be sort of used on the living allowance per month to calculate the budget for your salary for per month. The mobility and family allowances, they are just regular sort of basic 600 or 660 euros. To the mobility allowance you spend on going from your country, your home country and back, and for Christmas travels and so on, it's sort of your personal mobility. It's not spent on the research project as such. It's your personal allowance. As an example, in Denmark, it's typically part of the salary, but you can do this in different ways. You can also be paid this salary from the host organization as part of a flight ticket or any other way you organize this. The family allowance is only applicable if you have a legally either marriage or marriage-like relationship, or children who are dependent on you. And this situation can of course change during your fellowship. So if you're married during your fellowship, this family allowance can be added to your person month budget, you can say. So this is also quite new in Horizon Europe, that this is possible. Then there are also these other new features of a long-term leave allowance if you're away, perhaps on parental leave or sickness, for more than 30 days. So if you're away for 31 days, then your host organization can apply for this long-term leave allowance, where you can say the living and mobility allowance are put together and then covered in a percentage by the percentage covered by the beneficiary, which is not given by any other type of fund. So if there perhaps is some type of maternity, paternity fund that pays you 20% of your salary, then you can only get 80% covered by the commission. So that's the example here. Then there's, when you have a project, you're invited to request a special needs allowance if necessary. You can request up to 60,000 euros for the whole project period. In sort of steps from 3,000 to 4,000, 4,000 to 6,000 euros, depending on your needs. So if you have perhaps the need for some type of special reading device, or if something to handle a wheelchair or something like that, a special need to sort of cover any type of impediment you may have, then you can request for this unit cost. Good. And then we have the institutional costs per person month. You have the research, training and networking contribution of 1,000 euros, which is supposed to be spent on the research project. And for example, if you're going on secondments, then it can be spent on those types of travel costs and so on, but also on lab books and special computers you need and this type of thing. Then you can use these costs. And then you have the management and indirect contribution, which is for administration and overhead and so on, the 650 euros. So this these are the amounts that you can receive per person month. Per month you actually have the project running. Okay, thanks, Anne.
I think we have some time for a question now.
Okay, good. Do we have anything in the Q&A, just to see if there are anything on these eligibility rules, or if there's something else?
Concerning whether there are any changes concerning Switzerland. Is Switzerland still considered a third country?
Yes, Switzerland is still considered a third country. Yeah, so there's no change in their situation. Yeah.
I think that was the only question that has come so far, but we can maybe leave it here for 30 seconds just to see if there's a question.
A change with the Brexit, we'll take that one also. The situation there is that actually you still apply as if they are an applicant associated a country. So that's the status they have. They're still applying to be an associated country. So you would apply to a European fellowship with them, for example, a global fellowship with the UK as a host organization in Europe. And we have the unfortunate situation of the association not being finalized for last year's call. So actually all the proposals there, we just because Anne and I and the program committee, we just heard I think about 227 proposals that went to the UK have been called ineligible because they're not associated yet. So that's very unfortunate, but that is the situation at the moment. Yes.
So a question about the mobility allowance. Is it only for the months when I'll be traveling home, for instance? So the mobility allowance is sort of allocated per person month. So that means that it's an amount that it's allocated for every person month in your fellowship. So if your fellowship is 24 months, then you will have this 660 60 euro times 24 for the project, and for you to use for your travel when it is needed. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Good.
So no open questions right now, so maybe we'll proceed, and then we'll have maybe just this last one just came in. Also possible to add 6 months in a non-academic organization. Yes, I think is the question here. And
there's also, will I have to pay it back when not needed? No, you receive this funding and it's not sort of checked how you spend it. Yeah, it's just the host organization who employs you and will have to document that they actually pay the full amount to you as a gross amount. Yes.
Yeah, there's a question about whether it's possible to, I think it's this 6 month in a non-academic organization to be in a development bank, for example. So the definition of non-academic is anything that's not an academic organization. So if it's defined as sort of non-academic, then that should be possible, yes.
Oh, I can see that in the chat, and it's easier for us if you put the questions in the Q&A, but I can see there is a question in the chat, and perhaps I didn't clarify probably. The question is regarding the funding. Could you please clarify, does the institutional unit contribution go to the host organization? So perhaps I didn't explain this properly also, that the host organization is the one responsible for the fellowship, and they're the ones who officially apply for the fellowship. So even though from experience, it's the fellow, the researcher who wants to do this individual fellowship or postdoctoral fellowship who write the proposal with the supervisor, and they're the ones who do all the practical things. It's the host organization who has the you can say legal and financial responsibility for this fellowship, and they're also the ones who have to document everything. They're the ones who pay to the fellows the salary that is obligatory. You have to pay as a minimum this gross amount, these gross amounts that I showed you. They are the ones who also are responsible for proving that the project has been conducted as described and so on, together with you, of course, as a fellow. But they are the ones who have the rights and obligations regarding the institutional costs, you can say. But it's always a cooperation, you can say, between those three: the fellow, the fellow, the supervisor, and the hosting organization.
Okay.
Should we take these 2 questions and then perhaps move on? What is the deadline for doing your thesis defense before the application? And does the degree need to be conferred, or is it just the defense? So this is the thing, that it's sufficient to be the defense before the application. It has to be at the latest at the call deadline, which is the 14th of September. So that's the latest time you can have your defense. Otherwise, you're not eligible to have a PhD. If it's after that, you're not eligible. And in the global fellowships, the return phase has to be in your own country? Question mark. I have been outside of Europe for 3 years, so I'm not sure where I will go back. The return phase, well, you always have your main host in a member state or an associated country. So you would go from Europe where you have your host and your start, and you actually have the option of being there for the first 3 months as a type of secondment, just to, if you haven't met them there. It can be, I mean, depending on where you're from, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be where you're originally from. It can be where you have a scientific interest, and then that's your main host. And then you go to a third country for a period of time, and then you return to your hosting country in Europe. So it doesn't have to be it has nothing to do with your own nationality. You can be from anywhere in the world, really, and use this type of fellowship.
Yeah, I think
actually, so you have to be from a member state. Of course, you have to be from Europe or for the global fellowship. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So last question we'll maybe cover here is a research institute that is primarily applied science oriented counted as an eligible host for a global fellowship? And yes, that can certainly be the case, that is an eligible host. Yep.
Okay.
All right. We move on, and then we'll have other.
We'll have some other breaks. Yeah.
Yes, then I think I will take over from here. We'll dive a little bit more into the application. And the application for a postdoctoral fellowship is made of two parts. We have part A, and then we have part B. Part B consists of sort of electronic data that is entered into the funding and tenders portal. And this funding and tenders portal is the European Commission's one-stop shop for European funding. So this is where you'll find the topic, and this is also where you will press the button, submit application. So here you will then be asked to enter data relating to the application. And then we have the part B, which is the scientific part of your application. And we have B1, which covers the three main sections of your application, which is the excellence section, the impact section, and then the implementation section. This part, B1, can be a maximum of 10 pages. There's no need to add extra because the evaluators will not read beyond these 10 pages. So make sure that you stay within this page limit. And also it's important to follow the instructions for format. There is an application form, and you should make sure that you follow this, form very carefully. And then we have the B2 section, and this is where you'll add your resume. And here there will also be information about the organizations involved. And here you'll also have any letters of commitment when needed. So Marlis explained this possible placement period, which is a period in a non-academic organization. And if you include such a period, there has to be a letter of commitment from the organization that you will be present in for this amount of time. For the B2 section, there's no page limit, so you can add whatever documents are needed here. And then I will just, first just to say sort of briefly that your application will be evaluated in one of 8 scientific panels. We have the chemistry panel, the economic sciences panel, the ICT and engineering panel, and then we have earth and environmental sciences, life sciences, mathematics, physics, and then last social sciences and humanities. So your application will be evaluated in one of these, and it's important that you enter keywords that match to one of these panels, because this will assure that the right sort of evaluators will evaluate your specific proposal. And I'll get back to that in just a little bit. And then all applications or all of these panels will rank the application in 2 lists. So there's one for the European fellowships, and then there's one for the global fellowships. And then recently, Marlis and I attended a program committee meeting with the European Commission and the other representatives from the member states and associated countries. And here the European Commission presented some of the common mistakes that were seen in the last application round. So the application round in 2021. And we thought it would be useful for us or for you to hear some of these common mistakes, just to make sure that that you avoid these when preparing your proposal. So we'll just go through some slides that were presented to us by the European Commission. So first, one of the common mistakes was that applicants would sort of encode the wrong type of action. So if you were looking to apply for a European fellowship, it was seen that some would instead press the button, apply for a global fellowship. So it's just very important that you make sure that you apply for sort of the right type of action. And then it was also seen that the wrong applicant organization was added to the application. And it was seen that sometimes where the researcher is already employed, that host was sort of added to the application, where instead it has to be the sort of real future host organization that you make sure that you add this one to the application. And then this is just to show what it looks like when you're needing to add this information. So after you log into the funding and tenders portal and you've selected the topic, so this being the postdoctoral fellowships, either the global fellowship or the European fellowship, you will come to this page where you have to create your proposal. And here, as it says here at the bottom, you have to make sure that you've chosen the correct type of action, so the European fellowship or the global fellowship. And you can see this sort of out on the left side of your screen. And then here you also have to encode the host coordinator. And this will be done through a PIC number. So all organizations who are applying, so this will be your host organization, they will have to have a PIC number. And this PIC number you can get through, as an organization, through the funding and tenders portal as well. You'll add the PIC number and then also the short name for your host organization. And then it was also seen that there were some wrong information encoded about the people involved in the application, as well as sort of the basic proposal detail. So it's important to clarify that the researcher and the supervisor are not and cannot be the same person in the proposal. There were also some errors made where there was a missing abstract, the panel, the right panel or a panel was not chosen, or the appropriate keywords were not chosen. And just to show where this is to go, here you will see this screen also when filling out your application, or the part A. And here you can see that you can add a supervisor, you can add a researcher, and that you can add a contact person. And you will first do one, then the other, and then last here the contact person is also possible. And here supervisor and researcher, that has to be two different people. Then there's a short information about your proposal where you will add an acronym. This is an acronym that you choose for your proposal, and then a short summary. And then at the very bottom, you will choose the scientific panel out of these 8 panels that I presented just before. Then when you've chosen your panel, then you will be met with this drop-down menu where you can choose descriptors. These are keywords, and you can choose, I think it's up to 5 keywords that sort of well describe the area where your project is taking place. And this, as I said before, is sort of to determine which experts are most suitable to evaluate your proposal. You can also add a number of free keywords if you don't see any that are sort of perfectly suitable for your application, but important to choose the right ones. Then the Commission also seen some errors relating to the participants. And this relates back to what Marlis was talking about with the non-academic placements, as well as the secondments and what is known as short visits. So you can also have short visits as part of your project, but these are defined as visits of maybe a few days up to a week, where secondments are sort of longer periods of time. So it was seen that 50% of the encoded these non-academic placements, they were actually secondments or short visits, and in fact not these non-academic placements. So it's just important to make sure that you add the right sort of participants and they have the right role in the application. Then it was also seen that there were some outgoing or return phase institutions which were wrongly encoded. And then this is also to show how what it looks like in the portal. And then here where you have to list the participants, a maximum of three contacts can be listed for the host application. As I said, the supervisor, the researcher, as well as a possible contact person, which can be an administrative person at the host institution. And then you should only encode associated partners if you are applying for a global fellowship and you have an outgoing phase. So this outgoing phase host will be an associated partner. And then the other option for associated partners is for this non-academic placement period. So for secondments or these short visits, you won't encode these as associated partners. This means that for a global fellowship, there is, it's possible to have sort of 3 participants where you'll have a host organization, then you can have an associated partner for an outgoing phase, and you can have an associated partner for a non-academic placement if you have such one in your application. And for the European fellowships, you can only have 2 participants. You can have your host organization, and then you can have an associate partner for the non-academic placement period. And then you also have to describe the associated partners in the part B of your proposal. So this is the tables 5.1 and 5.2, which is in part B2. And here you can see in the tables that you will add in here under associated partner for outgoing phase for a global fellowship, or as an associated partner for a non-academic placement. So these are the yellow markings here in 5.1. And then also over in 5.2, you'll also add more information about these associated partners. And then a little bit of information about then how to encode the secondments, because since they're not listed as associate partners, then how do you go about encoding them? Yeah, so they're not associated partners, but they are, however, encoded in the part A of your proposal in section 5, and I'll show that in the next slide. And then it also has to be described in the narrative part B1 of your proposal, as well as in tables in B2. So here in part A of your proposal, secondments have to be added under this section 5, which is called other questions. So you go there and then you click yes to question 4, which asks if there is a secondment envisaged in the proposal. And then you will add the total duration of secondments. You can have more than one secondment in your project, but you have to add the total duration of secondments. And then also these have to be described in the part B2. And this again is in these 2 tables, 5.1, 5.2. And it says down here, it's called associated partner for secondment, but it's not in the actual part A, it's not listed as an associated partner. Yep. And then just briefly, some of the errors that was seen in the budget when the budget is added for the proposal. Then there were some instances where there was wrongly encoded nations. So a third country was added instead of a member state or Horizon Europe associated country as a host organization. So that was a wrong sort of encoding. And then also it was seen that these non-academic placement period, they were set to take place in a third country, which is not possible. So that would cause errors to the budget as well. And also there were instances where the duration of different phases was not typed in right. This could be European fellowship duration, global fellowship, the outgoing phase duration, or the return phase, or even these non-academic placement period. So that also results in errors in the budget. And then yeah, again, wrong budget relating to wrong durations, or the wrong country coefficient can be applied, which will happen if you sort of encoded not the right nations for the specific phases. And then again here, secondment or short visit, if they're added as associated partner, this can generate an extra budget, and this will also cause an error in the budget. And then just sort of to finish off this part A of the application, it's possible to validate your application before you submit it. And if you do so, you will get a list of sort of warnings. And it's important to pay attention to these warnings and to make sure that you correct them. Most of them will deal with identifying participating organization, the duration, as well as the budget. So basically these things that I've just talked about. And if you get an orange warning, as you can see here, this indicates that you should pay attention to this warning and sort of see what is the error. Is it something that should be corrected? And then you have the sort of red markings, which are blocking issues. If these are not resolved, then you won't be able to submit your application. And as you can see here with the arrow, there is this opportunity to validate. And when you press this button, you will get these a list of these warnings if there are any for your application. And then I also wanted to mention that you can submit your application sort of continuously, and then it will only be the last application submitted that will be evaluated after the call deadline. So if you're sort of worried that something will come up and the application will not make it through in time, then it's good to sort of submit application sort of well in advance, and just to make sure that you have an application in the system. So the deadline is very sharp at 5 p.m. and so you have to make sure that it's submitted before then. And then once there are no validation errors in this list that you see on the left side, if there's a box that says there are no validation errors, then you can save and exit, and then you're ready to submit your application. And then that was it for the part A and sort of some of the common mistakes that we have seen when applications make it through. And I think here we'll pause again for some questions. I see there's a little red marking here by Q&A, so there should be some questions. So Marlis, we can try. Yeah,
there's one on evaluators, but I think you'll talk a bit about evaluators, won't you, and in a moment. So we'll leave that one. One question: could you explain again what is a secondment? If we can do them also in third countries, for how long could they be as a maximum? And if we want to do several, is there a maximum of secondments we can do?
Yeah, so we can, maybe I can take it. So it's possible to do secondments in any country in the world. So also, yeah, in third country. And I think Marlis, you also said that secondments can be maximum 1/3 of your project's duration. And as I just mentioned, it's possible to do several secondments. So you can have as many as it makes sense for your project, I want to say, but together they can a maximum be for 1/3 of the project duration. So there's no really sort of maximum for the number of secondments, but for any secondment, if you choose to include them, they have to make sense for your project. So you have to make sure, or for your fellowship, you have to make sure that you can sort of make a case for why they are important.
Then there is a question: how do you choose contact persons? And I guess this would be, how do you find your supervisor or host organization? And I can think of 3 really nice options here. So first of all, you have EURAXESS, you have their website, where organizations actually post expressions of interest to find fellows for postdoctoral fellowships. So that would be one place. Then there is a matchmaking website made through our NCP project for Marie Curie, where we can actually add the link. I think if we haven't already added to our presentation, we'll add that. There's a link where you can try to find a hosting organization through that website. And the third would be your personal contacts through conferences and so on, and where you sort of find out, does this supervisor want to host you for a postdoctoral fellowship? And if they're interested, then you would start conversations about writing a proposal together and perhaps getting the research support at that organization. If it's a university, they typically have people who can also help with that. So sort of, yeah, through those organizations, EURAXESS, this matchmaking tool, and this also your personal contacts would be ways to find them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe we should just add, so the sort of definition of contact person, that will be a person that is based at your host organization, but it will often be sort of an administrative person who will be somewhat involved in the implementation of the project, but not sort of a supervisor person. So that's just that there are different roles. Mm-hmm.
And I can see that Jackson from EURAXESS has actually added the link for search options for hostings at the website of EURAXESS. Good. Mm-hmm. Yes. Then there is a question. Can you move between institutions or supervisors during the award period without planning a secondment? For example, start in Lab X, then receive an offer to work in Lab Y and take your MSCA funding with you. So this is not like the ERC, which is portable. You have to plan your project beforehand, and you have to plan who your hosting organization is. We have seen examples, but it's really difficult and complicated if you want to change hosting organizations, because the whole contract has to be changed, and this is not what was evaluated. So you have to have a very good reason to change hosting organizations. So it really has to be part of your project plan and career development plan that you want to go to this, from this lab to the other lab, or have a secondment somewhere during your project. So this is not sort of something you should, well, it's something you should plan for, but it's yeah, so not something where we can just sort of move it freely. Yeah.
Okay, maybe then the last question we'll take here. What happens if I plan to do a secondment and then I realize that it's not possible? And the opposite, what if I want to do a secondment that was not included in the submission? Yeah, so there are instances where a planned secondment cannot happen for one reason or the other. What you need to do is be in contact with your project officer. So every project will have a project officer assigned, which is someone at the European Commission who will sort of be overseeing and helping you with the implementation of the project. So then it can be discussed with them. And then, Marlis, I'm actually not sure if you can add a secondment to an already planned project.
Yeah, you would really have to explain why this is necessary for your project and why you have to add it to the project you have to the scientific aims you have described in your proposal. So you have to have some very good reasons that you can present to your project officer, and they will evaluate if it's feasible within the project. So you'd have to take it up for discussion. It is possible, of course. No science is sort of linear, where everything goes as expected. So they know there will be challenges and changes and so on, but it has to be sort of still within the project that has been evaluated. So that will be sort of something that has to be evaluated by the project officer. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I think I see another question coming in, but maybe we'll move forward a little bit with the presentation. Then we'll have another pause for a question, and we can come back to it so we don't lose track of time. Mm-hmm. And then Marlis, I think it's over to you for part.
Yep. Thank you. Yes, I'll just go to the part B forms, which are downloaded. So you find all this information on the funding and tenders portal of the European Commission, and you find the Postdoctoral Fellowships call, and there you say that you want to submit a proposal, and you go into the system, and you can download as Word documents the part B templates. And we've cut in a picture of what that looks like here in the beginning. Yes. Can change, and then you have to fill in these. I'll just go through the main sections of excellence, impact, and implementation just briefly to show you what questions are asked in those sections. So here the first section is where you describe your research project, quality and pertinence of the project's research and innovation objectives, and how they are ambitions and go beyond state of the art. So this is where you describe your research proposal, and also what the part of that proposal is also how you are, of course, aiming for something that is very ambitious and beyond the state of the art. You can already here describe yourself, maybe also a little bit, and introduce yourself, make it interesting to the evaluator. The question was asked, who is the evaluator? It's somebody who is an expert within your field, who the Commission chooses from a list of evaluators. And they will sort of find somebody, 3 at least, who fit within the proposal description that you have given, the descriptors you have given. So the next section is the soundness of the proposed methodology, including interdisciplinary approaches, consideration of gender dimension, if there is a gender dimension, or if there is not, you describe that also. You just mentioned that you actually have sort of taken stock of whether there is a gender dimension in your proposal. And then you also describe your open science practices here in this section. Okay. The third chapter, you can say here, is the quality of the supervision, training of the supervision and the training, and the two-way transfer of knowledge between the researcher and the host. So here you both describe, of course, how you will bring your knowledge and experience into the organization who is hosting you, and how the knowledge of your supervisor will go into your research and the work you do, and perhaps also your network. There is increased focus on the supervisor also in Marie Curie, so there will be sort of a focus on how this is described and their experience with supervising PhDs and fellows and so on, and that this supervision is also done very well, and that you're also introduced into the host organization and so on. But here it's about the transfer of knowledge between the two, supervisor and fellow. Yes. And of course, in the case of the global fellowships, there will be a 3-way exchange, because you have the global organization, the third country organization, you have the European organization, and you have the fellow that has to sort of interchange knowledge. Okay, so here is in the fourth section, you have the quality and appropriateness of the researcher's professional experience, competences, and skills. And this is where you describe your sort of in brief, your professional CV and the knowledge you have. And this all goes into the next section of impact, where you sort of describe how all this, your research project and your knowledge and skills will feed into the impact of the project. So the credibility of the measures to enhance the career perspectives of the fellow and employability, and the contribution to his and her skills development. So here you describe how you'll advance your skills and advance your career perspectives through this research project. So it's knowledge and training through research here in this section. And then you'll describe the sustainability and quality of the measures to maximize expected outcomes and impacts through dissemination, exploitation, and communication. So here you would actually describe, we often advise to do it in sort of a table, have a communication plan, a dissemination plan, which conferences, which papers will you produce, and the exploitation, what will you get out of your project, and in the end, what will the outcomes be, and so on. So that's what you describe in this section. Then the magnitude and importance of the project's contribution to expected scientific, societal, and economic impacts. This is really about the reach of your project. How far out in the world will it reach, and what type of impact will it have on how many people will it impact? So here you can go a bit sort of into the effects of your research project. So here we have the third section about implementation, and this is where you describe your work plan through work packages, and you also describe the possible risks that could be in the project as such. So it could both be risks within the research project, but also in the risks in the implementation. For example, is it a risk that you have a secondment that won't go through because this organization is, something going through something, a change, and what type of mitigation measures will you take in case of those risks? So that's where you describe that you are aware of some risks, but you actually have a plan if something sort of doesn't go according to plan. And here you also show your Gantt chart, which is part of these 10 pages that you are describing your project in. Yes. Then finally, you have this quality and capacity of the host institutions and participating organizations, including hosting arrangements. And here you show how they will receive you both through their research sort of infrastructure, but also as a host for you as coming from a different country. Perhaps they have some type of office that takes in the international employees and helps you join the group, and sort of how you'll be sort of welcomed into the research group that you are going to. So it's both research-wise, but also on a more sort of personal level, how you'll be hosted in the place of the research. So those were the 3 sections that you have to describe on the 10 pages. And furthermore, just to sort of get more knowledge on what the Commission sort of wants from these fellowships, you can have a look at the MSCA work program. We have put in links here. The guide for applicants sort of is a description in brief of the program rules in some tables and all these eligibility rules, which we've just described. We have also added the standard application form as a PDF so that you can see what that looks like. The guidelines and supervision, the green charter, which shows how you can sort of make your project greener, which is not an obligation, but something that is very much sort of wished to by the Commission. And also the evaluation form, where you can see the evaluation criteria that the evaluators have to go by. Good. And I don't know how we are for time. We still have some time to present the last bit. Yep.
We don't have that many slides left, so maybe just a short pause here for a few questions.
Yeah. So there is a question here. For a global fellowships, there are 2 supervisors, one in my return country and another in the outgoing phase. In case my outgoing institution just takes fellows only for 1 year, can I have a second supervisor in the outgoing phase? You have a second supervisor. Well, you can have in one organization, you can have a supervisor and a co-supervisor if that's needed, depending on how the structure is in the place. But as I understand the question, you're asking if you can have 2 different places of outgoing institutions, and that's not really a possibility. You have one outgoing institution, and then you have secondment places for up to 1/3 of the 12 to 24 months that you're in the outgoing phase, and then you have 12 months return. But you don't sort of have 2 different places that you're going. I hope that replied to that question. And there's an addition, or a co-supervisor in a secondment. Yes, that's definitely an option, and it's also very much wished for that you have co-supervisors in the places where you go for a longer period of time, that somebody who's responsible for you to supervise the project you're working on and to give you knowledge on what you're working on. Do I have less chances of getting the fellowship if my host is a young PI? Not less chances necessarily. The supervisor or host here is has to have some experience in in supervising postdoctoral fellows. That would be expected. They also have to have an excellent research career, so it has to match up. But I think we would normally advise, if it's a very inexperienced supervisor, you could additionally add a more experienced supervisor and have them co-host, I'd say, co-supervise in some way, and describe why you've done that. So you could say, maybe this one doesn't have that much experience, but we have this other supervisor who's very busy, doesn't have much time, but he will sort of oversee the work we're doing together. So that would be an option to do that.
Then we have, last question. If we won't make it for this deadline, will there be another call soon or just next year? So it's an annual call, so there will be a chance, but it won't be until next fall, so the fall of 23. Yep. So I think that was it now. So maybe we'll do just the last section of our presentation, and then we have maybe a little bit of time for questions towards the end as well. Just a little bit about the proposal, the application, and then the evaluation process and the criteria. So as was said, there's a 10-page limit for the scientific part of the application, and it will be evaluated in one of these 8 panels, and 2 ranking lists will be established. So for the evaluation process, evaluation is primarily done remotely by these at least 3 different experts, as Marlis also explained, who are sort of experts within the field where your sort of a project, your fellowship is to take place. And then these remote evaluations will be followed by a consensus group meeting where sort of a score for the applications will be agreed upon. And then when these applications are evaluated, they are listed either as directly to the main list and hence qualified for direct funding, or they will be put on a reserve list, or on this what is called below available budget or below threshold. So the threshold is at 70% for postdoctoral fellowships. So in order to be considered for funding, your application needs to reach at least 70% in the score. And your score will sort of be based on your combined scores for the score in each of these 3 different sections that Marlis already went through: the excellence, the impact, and the implementation section. And here you can see the evaluation criteria. So these are what the evaluators will be looking at for the 3 different criteria. And we won't go through them here, but this is just for you to have sort of the overview. And then it's always very useful to consult the evaluation form, which is sort of the questions that the evaluators will be looking for the answers to in your application. So it's very good to sort of look over this document as you are writing your application, just to make sure that you've answered all the questions. And then, as I said, you will end up with a final score that has to be over 70% to be considered for funding. This 70%, or this is just to show you the evaluation form. And as I said, it's good to have this nearby when you're writing your application. But then, as for these cutoff scores that relate to the threshold is 70%, but because it's a very competitive field, and because the scores are often significantly higher, this means that in practice, your application will need to reach a higher score to be considered for funding. So these are the cutoff scores from last year's call. for the different panels. And here you can see that all the cutoff scores are actually up in the 90s, some even over 95. If we look at the engineering panel for the Global Fellowship, it's at 95.8, as well as the environmental sciences, it's also at 95.8. So this means that your application has to be strong, and you have to make sure that it gets a high score. Then the Commission has, here in Horizon Europe, has introduced a restriction on resubmission. This means that if you've submitted a proposal 1 year and you've received a score of less than 70%, then you should not be reapplying the following year if the proposal has the same recruiting organization as well as the individual researcher. So this is sort of to make sure that not too many applications are sent in, which will have which will not come close to a chance of being funded. So if you receive a score in less than 7%, there should be significant changes to your application for you to be able to submit the following year. And then we've just added a slide here showing sort of the overall statistics from last year's call. And you can see that for a number of applications, there were over 8,000 applications sent in, so 8,247. And out of these, oh, I went too far, sorry for that. Oh, sorry. Here, I'm just trying to move my, I have these small video images on my screen. I'm trying to move out of the way. But 1,157 or 56 projects were funded. This comes to a success rate of 14.02%. And then that was it for the evaluation. And then we have a little time here for questions again, if there are any new questions.
Perhaps we can take this one about the evaluators, who they are and who you're writing to. You're writing to experts within your field and experts within, if you've chosen interdisciplinary words, keywords in your proposal, then you're writing to each of those, but you can't know beforehand who they are, sort of not, so you only know that they're experts within your field. We do sometimes get names, but it's become much more difficult with GDPR. In Horizon 2020, we received names generally of who was evaluating. We haven't seen any for Horizon Europe yet, but it's, yeah, very limited knowledge that we have of who the actual evaluators are. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Okay. Does an introductory talk to my intended project 2 years ago count already as you have already started your project? I'm a little bit unsure of the meaning of this question. If it relates to sort of resubmission, then that's only, that only relates to applications who have sort of been fully submitted and have gone in through into the funding and tenders portal. But if you want maybe no submission, but preparation since field change.
I'm not sure what perhaps it's because there's a question in the chat, because it's been posted, how important is it that a proposed project should be related to your background? Can it be a new area for you? Actually, it can be a new area if you describe how you will be sort of fulfill this area sort of scientifically well and so on. And if you sort of show that you have new career prospects through this project, then it is actually possible. But you have to describe feasibly how this would be possible for you. There's also a question I can see, am I able to apply for this fellowship if I'm Russian? Yes, you are. The sanctions at the moment that are in place about Russia and Russian organizations does not go towards Russian people, Russian nationals, you can say. So this is possible. We have heard that there may be some areas where Russians cannot conduct research within Horizon Europe, but generally it's not a limitation here. And I do remember also there was a question about the success rates for global fellowships, European fellowships, and you showed that actually we can't predict where the higher score is needed or where the success rates are higher in any way. We can't give any, it really depends on what type of fellowship you want to conduct. Yeah.
So then I think we just had a question as well for Slido, maybe returning briefly to Slido. It'd be interesting for us to know what was your most important takeaway from this about an hour and a half presentation about the postdoctoral fellowships. So if you would just share a word or two or however many you want, that's always useful for us to know. So it's just slido.com and the same code as we've been using. Learning about the application portal.
Evaluation, yes. Clear information on the timelines in and out of Europe according to the requirements. Yes, there are actually some requirements, and in the guide for applicants you can see all the requirements listed quite well and clearly, I think. Yeah. So, and also, yeah, clarification on eligibility. I think that's always nice to see that you don't waste time on a proposal where you actually can see that, okay, I'm not eligible, or actually you find out, okay, this is actually possible for me. That's also nice. And success rates, yeah.
Also about this co-supervisor role, yeah, important to note that it's possible to have a co-supervisor where that makes sense.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
Just see one more person typing, so I'm just gonna see if something else comes in, and then we can, yeah, the common mistakes.
Yeah, that can help you in the proposal process. It's very good. Good.
Yep. So I think that was just it from sort of our side. So Daria, I don't know if you want to take over with last words, maybe?
Yes, thank you so much for this excellent session. I also learned a lot because I am also a researcher, and my university in the future is really near future, just thinking to host a European researcher in our center. So it was so useful for me. And I'm going to share this information with the other people in my university as well. So as I see, you really covered a lot of points and common mistakes. I really didn't expect so many questions. It was great, and you covered all of them. You answered them. So I hope there will be an increase in the number and, of course, the success of the applications. So with that, we came to the end of the session. And a big thank to you, Anna and Marlis, again. And thank you all for your participation. So stay tuned for our upcoming events, webinars, and we are looking forward to see you in our webinar next week on MSCA and ERC. Thank you, and have a good rest of your day and good evening, all of you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.